Welcome to Disambiguation. I'm your host, Michael Fauscette. Each week, we interview experts in artificial intelligence, generative AI, and business automation to help business leaders understand how to use these tools for the biggest business impact. Our show today is MCP, AI Agents and the Future of Network Infrastructure. I'm joined by John Capobianco, Head of AI and Developer Relations at Itential. John, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. I'm really excited to be here this week. This is really exciting for me.
It's an exciting set of topics, so I'm looking forward to the conversation. Why don't we start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, your role at Itential, and I know you have a really interesting path through network engineering, Cisco, government, and now into AI and developer relations. So just share a little bit about it.
Well, sure. I have a background in computer programming. I was working at a local aluminum factory after some struggles with higher education, let's say, and but wanted to go back to school, and I went to a 3-year computer programming program. But I actually ended up in the world of IT, not the world of development, through my placement and through my certifications. So I was a network engineer, and still consider myself a network engineer for the past 25 years. Like you mentioned, in public and private sector, I was a senior network architect at the Parliament of Canada for about 8 years. And there was an inflection point there where building a giant new greenfield network is one problem, but operating it is another challenge entirely. And I started to do network automation in around 2014, 2015, and just found a passion for blending that computer programming background with network infrastructure. So I've written 2 books on the subject, an Ansible book called Automate Your Network, I self-published, and the Cisco Press Pyats book. And Pyats actually is still, to this day, an integral part of how I've blended the world of artificial intelligence with network automation tools. So at Itential, I'm the head of AI and DevRel, and I'm really a proponent for our new agent platform, and our platform that's going to help blend this world of deterministic automation workflows and reasoning capable agents.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, definitely dead center of the conversation that we're all having right now. And one of the things that I wanted to spend some time with today is Model Context Protocol, or MCP, which has been really hot topic over the last year or so. And I know you compared MCP to SMTP for email, or HTTP for websites. That's pretty bold, for something that's only about a year old, I guess. What makes you put it at that level of significance, and what's driving the adoption?
Well, I think it's partly, one, the significance of the protocol, yes. And honestly, I had never really considered that, why I'm classifying it as another protocol. I'm trying to do that to help people have an analogy so they can kind of wrap their heads around what MCP is. I interface with mainly network and infrastructure related folks. So if I could draw a parallel to something like, we have a protocol that handles email and its formats and attachments and security and all that stuff around communicating through that protocol, right? Or other protocols that have been around for a very long time. Now, I know this is a little bit contentious because it was not the IEEE that put out this protocol. It was Anthropic. But quite honestly, why it's become so popular is because it's open, and because it is open source, and because it is platform and vendor agnostic. I think it's less contentious had Anthropic released this proprietarily, where it only works with Claude and only works with Anthropic's toolkit, but they did not do that. It works with any provider, any tool, any agent. So that's helped to drive popularity and adoption rate. The other thing is that typically it's a small little blob of JavaScript object notation that you add to, and let's pick a very popular one, Copilot, let's say in VS Code. You can augment that Copilot with one of these, and I checked before the call, there's over 17,000. Now, that's a scale in quality and security and trustworthiness, but generally speaking, there's nearly 20,000 MCPs out there. You could probably list the top 5 tools that you use in a day-to-day life, and there's likely an MCP server for
Yeah.
that tool that you're using, right?
Yep.
Um, but I do think in terms of significance, it is significant. And I like to, I know it seems maybe simple, but say it backwards, right? It's a protocol, much like
Yeah.
SMTP or HTTP, that provides context. And that context could be what the actual tool set is that you've written the MCP for. In my case, it's network state, right? So my MCP tool gathers information from the network and puts it in that context window that
Mm.
then gets sent to the model. And the model is agnostic. It could be a large language model, a commercial model, a open source private model that you're running locally. Right? The protocol is agnostic of that. It's just about providing augmentation, that context window. So when
Mm.
you have your human prompt, could you please check the health of these interfaces on device R1? The protocol will take that natural language, and under the hood, it's JSON RPC2, right? It is still a transport protocol, but much like those other protocols, you can visit a website and not have to know HTML,
Right.
right? Like you just visit the website and click things and do things on the website. You don't have to be a programmer to do that, or send an email, right? You don't have to go to the CLI and send that by hand using the protocol. There are
Thank goodness.
layers for that. So that's, these agents that we see now are an abstraction layer that after you plug those MCPs in, now you can actually really start to see emergent behavior, right? If you can imagine connecting 5, 10, 15 MCPs where not only am I checking the health of
Mm.
that network device, I'm sending an email report, I'm sending a Slack message, I'm making a phone call, I'm opening up a ServiceNow ticket, I'm documenting everything in my source of truth in Netbox. Maybe I'm making a Visio diagram, or right, like the possibilities just become endless. It's really a matter of creativity at that point, Michael.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. So for the business users in the audience, let's make this a little bit more about why do I care? Like, why should they care about MCP? What does that do for them from a business perspective?
Well, it really is a whole new set of tools. So I think, let me put it this way, for the business. Previously, you had to have some sort of programming background or have an actual programming department that interfaces with REST APIs. I think
Hmm.
everyone that listens is familiar with what an
Yeah,
API is at this point, right, in human history.
I hope so.
But you still have to know how to do a get with the JSON body or a post, or right, there is some fiction there. Well, now this abstraction layer is just natural language. So even at
Mm.
Itential, like our marketing department has tapped into MCPs where they're extracting data from different sources and generating content out of it
Mhm.
through their Claude desktop or through their VS Code or their Gemini CLI, right? There's many different people using many different tools,
Yep.
but it's not restricted to network nerds like me. I happen to have a hyper focus on infrastructure MCPs, but there are Google MCPs, Google Map MCPs, AWS knowledge base MCPs, Azure MCPs, Microsoft MCPs, GitHub MCPs, on and on and on, that have business value. I'm just playing with the official Microsoft O365
Mm.
MCP, and I'm not, I have no dog in the fight. I'm just throwing out ones that I'm aware of and am using.
Yep.
But now I can take a coding session or a vibe coding session or whatever I'm doing in Claude and say, can you turn this into a PowerPoint for me in O365? And it will do that happily. Or can you write this up in a Word document?
Yep.
Could you make a Visio diagram of this vibe coding networking session that I've been doing? Right, connecting in business tools like Office 365, your calendar, your email. We get into this world of personal assistants now with Open Claude that actually have
Mm.
access to your email and your calendar and your systems, that can truly be a personal assistant or a digital coworker, or however you want to look at it, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of that foundationally, Michael, is MCP and the lessons we've learned from MCP. I know that Claude is more skills based, but that's not to say that you can't mix and match skills and MCPs together. They actually work better together.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's how I see just from my end of it using it, and I'm definitely a user, not, not a programmer, but with Claude, with my local model that I use Jan as a front end for, and, Mistral, and I can connect to Google Drive and my email and all those different things. It's been really useful. I mean, it almost seemed like it's the way that my agents and AI tools can use stuff, right?
Right, but
Connect and use
Michael,
stuff.
do you feel like you're getting, okay, one, that the juice is worth the squeeze, that that
Mm,
what you get out of setting those tools up is worth a little bit of friction of adding the MCP to whatever it
yeah,
is you're using, right? And
yeah,
two, do you feel like you are actually accomplishing more, like getting more done and of a higher quality, and you'll be able to take maybe an idea and get that, not instant gratification, but the the output that you've been seeking that normally would have taken, some cases, my content would have taken weeks for me to achieve
yeah,
some of the things I'm getting done
yeah,
in minutes to half an hour,
yeah. I mean, I give you a simple one for me that I set up not long ago because I mean I produce a lot of content, right? Books
Right.
and white papers and ebooks and blog posts and research reports, and and it just sounds like a simple thing, but I can't tell you the number of times that somebody's asked me a question that I've written about, and it took me a day and a half to find the thing I wrote 3 years ago that had the quote in it I needed for the conversation that I was trying to have a day and a half ago. And
Right.
I added a simple I built a simple bot that is connected to all of those content repositories and put it in Slack. And now I just bring Slack up. It's internally focused. It's my own tool. I just ask it a question, and seconds later, it gives me everything I needed that I would have spent a day and a half looking for.
That
So
is
just that
incredible.
simple thing, right? And again, not a programmer, so for me, it's using the capabilities of of the MCP and the agent to connect to all sorts of data sources that just aren't connected normally.
That is a wonderful use case. I would love for you to join our Vibe Ops forum and share that work. Or I'm going to make sure that people listen to this story, because that is what a wonderful use case. I try to do similar things by pointing it at my GitHub repository, and
Mm.
uh, I've gotten to a point where I've lost track of some of the code I've even written. Right, so to have
Yeah.
it remind me and add new suggestions. Um, and again, I think I really believe in people. I think anyone who's actually able listening to this, it really isn't that hard in something like Copilot or Claude Desktop or any of the CLIs out there to get started on this journey, Michael. Like, I don't think you need to take a community college 3-year programming course to
Right.
start today. I really think it's helped democratize access to these systems. And honestly, like we mentioned, think of the top 5 or 10 things that you do daily, or tools that you're interfacing with, and
Mhm.
see if you could, consolidate them through this new MCP into a central tool like a Claude desktop or something, right?
Yeah. I mean, and even just connecting Claude, Desktop and the Cowork, which I use Claude Cowork a lot, right? It's been really useful for me. It was really easy to, to put a Chrome extension in that enabled that connection and leave a browser open for it, and then it just can connect and pull whatever information it needs from my Google Drive or whatever, right? And that just that
Right.
simple step has made a big difference in the usability of the tool.
Well, and on the horizon, I know it's in early beta preview right now, but something called Web MCP is coming, Michael. So I
Mm,
think people listening should really pay attention to that. It's actually going to, so right now, right, interfacing with the World Wide Web is kind of screen programmatically. It's still a little bit difficult. You're still screen scraping, and it's still hard to
mhm.
simulate access. Google and Microsoft and a few people have teamed up for something called Web MCP, which is going to allow your agents to drive the World Wide Web, to go to
Yeah,
websites and to interact with them and fill out forms and click things and download things. So the entire way we interface with the World Wide Web, I believe is not coming to an end. I mean, it's going to be a while, but the way some people who are out front, who consume the web, are going to be consuming it via their agents and via this Web MCP. I'm excited for it because I want to
mm,
see if it can go to certain vendors' websites and download their guides and their install guides
Yeah.
and their
Yeah.
protocol guide, apply it to my field, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm excited about what when that comes out, when that becomes generally available, sort of how that's going to affect the way we the way we consume the web.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely would make it easier. And, not that using a Chrome extension connected to Claude is that difficult, but on a daily basis, I do have to log back in, right?
Right.
It's a couple of extra steps, not a big deal. I know that I'm going to have to do it because it'll kick me out at night and, I have to go back in the morning and reestablish. But, but the fact that you could change the way so that I'm not going through another vehicle to get to the web, that would certainly make that a much smoother, activity. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Um, so I know we were talking before about, this, MCP server you built, PyATS, I think.
PyATS.
Yeah. So it connects AI agents to Cisco network devices. Can you can you talk about how that's used, what it does, and when an AI agent can talk to infrastructure, what changes to network ops, how does that work?
Sure. So I've been using PyTS since about 2019. I was fortunate enough that the actual developers of the tool were in Ottawa, and I was able to meet with them and have a full introduction and have a lot of support along my journey. I co-authored the Cisco Press book about PyTS in 2024, and in
Mm,
my last chapter of the book, chapter 23, it actually shows how to tie PyTS into artificial intelligence. So as far back as then, but it wasn't through
mm,
MCP. It
right.
predated MCP, and there was some friction there. There was a lot involved to do that. So when MCP came out, I decided to make the PyTS MCP server and abstract. Here's an example of a tool. So PyTS is able to run Cisco and other network companies show commands,
Mm,
and the data that comes back is automatically parsed into JavaScript object notation. That's one of the primary key features of PyETS is the ability to run a show command, an arbitrary command, and instead of getting the Cisco CLI raw output, you get structured data back. So that was one tool, the show command
mm,
tool. And we decorate that in a tool called Fast MCP, which is kind of like Fast API if anyone's developed
mm,
API systems with Fast API, but it's Fast MCP. Fast MCP 3.0 just came out actually with some new features and some new security enhancements and things like that.
mm,
But with with minimal code, really though, like less than a few hundred lines of code, I developed about 7 or 8 PyTS tools, the ability to run show commands, the ability to configure the device, run show logging, run
mm,
dynamic tests. So what it lets me do is connect that MCP into, say, let's say Copilot in VS Code. And now in Copilot, I can say, can you check the health of router 1? And it will go ahead and run arbitrary commands. It
mm,
figures out the commands to run. That's all I have to say.
mm,
It's non-deterministic in that way. And then it will come back with natural language and say, yes, it's healthy or not healthy, or here's the tests I ran or whatever.
mm,
So it really shifts everything away from having to log into a device and run a command and record the output and then maybe do something useful with the output. You sort of jump right to doing something useful with the state and the output of the device just by asking your questions. Now, this isn't meant to displace network engineers. It truly is an augmentation. If
mm,
you think about a question that I might be able to ask the network because I've been doing it for 25 years, I can ask some pretty serious and complex and sophisticated questions to the
right.
agent and do some pretty amazing things with the network. At the
Mm,
same time, a junior engineer, I still think it empowers them to apply what they're learning or what little they do know and augment that and be a force multiplier where they can sort of become a senior
mm,
without having to spend 25 years in the industry, right?
mm. I mean, it's anything that you can simplify into more of a conversational approach seems like it does remove some barriers and make that information available much more quickly so that you could take some action if needed, right?
Well, yeah, and I think any one of us could say, is this device healthy?
Yeah.
right? And interpret a natural language response to that, as opposed to like any junior who has access to this agent can ask those questions, right? I've been given this ticket. Here's the information that a human has
Mm.
given me describing a problem. Can you go check the network for these, if for any indication of where this problem might be? Any one of us can do
Mm.
that. And the other thing is, in terms of democratization, in any language, you could ask that in French or in Spanish or in German or Italian or Japanese. It truly is a universal language interface,
Mm.
right? So, and the keyboard is a barrier to entry for some. This
Yeah.
this is multimodal. You can speak to this in natural language through a microphone and get audio input back that sounds like a human. I had an MCP, so Twilio has an MCP, and I
Mhm.
had my agent phone me with the results of a test I ran on the network. Honestly, the video's out there. It actually reaches out and phones my phone with a human summary, just like a coworker phoning me saying, "Hey, I ran the test and here's the results, and there was one failed test you might want to take action on." In real time, it phoned me. I was blown away by that. And that was just a proof of, not a proof of concept, but like, the realm of the possible, let's say. Well, Twilio
Right.
has an
Right.
MCP. I wonder if I could plug that in and actually get an agent to phone me. And within the afternoon, Twilio was phoning me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And again, access to information in a format and in a way that you want it is really powerful.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about I know Intentional, your company launched Flow AI and Flow MCP Gateway. And you described that to me as a control layer that makes sure AI driven intent passes, you know, through policy enforced workflows, right? So before anything executes, you've passed it through the policy that would set the boundaries, right? It's a governance layer. So why is that matter? Why is that important? And what goes wrong without it?
Well, I think so history kind of rhymes. And I see, so Itential's been doing centralizing network automation, making the tools available through
Mm.
Ansible and Python scripts and Terraform and OpenTofu, other things, where you bring that to the platform and then you can visualize it and build and assemble workflows, deterministic orchestration, right? So the orchestration is key, in particularly with agents, because these agents are going to have
Right.
autonomy, and we definitely need, it's not, it's really necessary stuff. It's not the coolest or the sexiest stuff, but governance, guardrails,
Right.
role-based access control, AAA, all of the security guardrails and logging and audit capability, all of that our platform provides, in addition to bring your own. So you can bring your own model, you can bring your own MCP. That's what the
Mhm.
point of the gateway is for you to bring in, because there's a lot of internal MCPs. When I say 17,000, that's just the external public facing. I'm
Right.
sure a lot of enterprises have their own internal MCPs, and they're finding they're starting to sprawl. It's hard to manage them. There's a little friction getting them installed and making them part of workflows and orchestrating them. So that's sort of the idea with Flow AI and Flow agents, is that through natural
Mhm.
language, you can build agents and connect them to your existing or emerging network automation workflows and the MCP tools of choice. So you have the mix of the reasoning capability with the determinism of your automation, right? So now you truly have these virtual employees, these digital coworkers, that can do things autonomously.
Mhm.
I started, and I think the journey is likely going to be kind of twofold: a journey at the top of human in the loop, right, where the agent is waiting for input, waiting for approvals, waiting for
Right.
certain feedback from the human, to human on the loop, where maybe you're looking at the tickets
Mhm.
it created and you're keeping close attention to it. You're sort of on the loop watching it go, to full autonomy, where you've established trust and established the guardrails, and you feel comfortable enough to turn some of these agents loose autonomously to do
Mhm.
certain things. I think in the other layer, though, it's going to be read-only activities, kind of a crawl, walk, run,
Yeah.
right? Where we're going to start with
Mm.
read-only stuff, which is still highly valuable,
Mhm.
testing and documentation and compliance reports and audits, and there's a whole realm of value there as you're building the agents and getting their personalities right and getting the right mix of tools into low risk activities.
Mm,
Um, certain enterprises are shutting down interfaces or enabling interfaces through agents. That's something they've actually offshored to that full autonomy.
mhm.
Is instead of bothering humans to do this work, we're going to offload it to deterministic workflows and agents that can reason to shut or no shut interfaces, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because they're dealing with millions of these interfaces, and it's a perfect use case that's sort of low risk, right? It depends on the interface, I suppose, they're shutting
yeah,
down,
yeah.
but there's really high value there for them to turn that into just an agentic workflow, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I like to think of that last phase as human in the lead, right? So human in the loop, human on the loop, human in the lead, because
I
we've
like
set
that.
the boundaries, the guardrails, the goals, whatever it might be, right? Yeah.
I really like that, actually. I'm going to reuse that if you don't mind. Human in the
Oh,
lead. I
absolutely,
really like
absolutely.
that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I started a conversation around is thinking of governance in a different way. And I know you've been pushing this for a bit too. You call it a hybrid model. I call it governance by design. The idea that we have to move into a model where it's baked in and not added on later, right? Can you talk a little bit about, AI driven intelligence paired with deterministic execution and why that's important for companies to understand as they go into deploying these agents? Why is this hybrid approach is is the right one versus maybe jump into that last stage at first, right?
Well, I think I don't want to say there's misunderstanding, but there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of fog out there when we say fully autonomous.
Mm.
That's very scary, in that there's a lot of risk, it seems, to have something that's truly
Yeah.
autonomous. What I mean by that is that, right, like it is fully autonomous within the boundaries and with the
Yeah.
scope that you've set it up for,
Yeah.
right? So the guardrails are important, and those deterministic workflows are super important because, and I'll use a very simple example. They don't have to be very complex workflows. It's a start, action, finish. And in action, you can have loops, you can have as many stages as you want. So, for example, an email distribution, right? I don't want the agent to reason on who to email, right? Like, I don't want to just
Right.
randomly emailing people,
Sure.
right? So the determinism there is the actual recipients of the email for that particular agent, for that particular workflow. And then,
Mhm.
yes, the agent can use generative AI to fill in the text of the
Right.
email. That's the nice mix there, is a deterministic flow of who to email, but using the reasoning capability of what to actually send them dynamically given the situation it's facing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Slack messages is the same thing. The room you want to send the Slack to, you want that to be deterministic. Maybe the actual device, if you're making an agent that's monitoring something critical like the core, you might put guardrails in to say, like, this is the only
Mm.
device that you can talk to, and make sure you're only talking to this device or
Yeah.
this set of devices, right?
Yeah.
So you need some determinism there to really set the autonomy up for success.
Yeah.
It's much like, and you may want to provide things like a knowledge base, a RAG sort of system,
Mhm.
where you have your policies and your guardrails and your um, standard settings, right? The actual time server to use, the domain controllers to use, whatever information supplementally you can provide the agent to give it even more context, right? It's all about
Yeah.
context here. So,
Yeah.
and then we get into things like skills, where you actually are providing markdown and CLIs and API access
Mhm.
directly in the form of skills, which help even more in the determinism and the autonomy.
Yeah.
So I think it very much is like an employee, though. It's going to need care and feeding. It's going to need training. It's going to need nurturing. It's going to need access to corporate resources and documentation, right? And treat it much like a virtual employee.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like that paradigm, and I think that helps business people put this in the right sort of frame. That you're not hiring a new employee and then turning them loose to go, deal with customer support before you've trained them on the company and the knowledge base and the tools that you need and the culture, how you interact with those customers and what's expected and all those things, right? I wouldn't turn a human loose that way. I certainly wouldn't then think I could just turn loose a probabilistic autonomous agent and think that I was going to be successful because I haven't given it anything to work with, just like a human. I wouldn't do that with a human.
Right. I sort of agree with Jensen Huang from the CEO of NVIDIA when he says that the future of the IT department is an HR department for agents
Mhm.
in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
And that this is less of a technological problem, more so it is a human resources problem,
yeah,
right? A lot of it is words, a lot of it is naturally, you're developing the personas of these agents in natural language. So it's sort of a bit of a different exercise.
yeah,
Um, and all of our expertise is going to make these agents better, right? Ultimately, it's still a computer in many ways, and that's going to do what you tell it to do,
yeah.
right? It's just how we're telling it to do it really matters now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the books I published last year was Building the Digital Workforce, and that's the paradigm that I feel comfortable when I talk to business people about, is think about this as a digital workforce combined with your human workforce in a hybrid way so that you can accomplish whatever your goals were or are, right? I think that helps a lot when you start to think about the way you wanna train that agent and, onboard the agent, even hire the agent that's the right skill set for what it is you're trying to do, give it access to the right tools, all those things. I think it helps a lot if you think of it in that context.
Well, and I think it's going to be swarms of agents. I don't like
Mhm.
much like the human resources org chart.
Yeah.
I know enough IT security, but I'm not. My role at Itential is not IT security, right? So I don't invest my time in those resources, getting those certifications or reading those books, or right. But tertiarily, yes, I have to understand,
Mm.
be grounded in security because it's been part of my
Yeah.
career for how long it has been, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think agents are going to be similar, right? You're going to have a security focused agent along with a network focused agent, and each of them are going to have
Mm.
access to their own particular resources, much like a human in that role would have, and their
Yeah.
training and the way they're built and the way you describe their roles and their personas.
Mhm.
Um, so it's going to scale much like an org chart. Now, do we let agents talk to each other directly? The agents have to go up to a supervisor agent, and that agent is more specialized in
Yeah.
policies and higher decision making, and how many tiers in this hierarchy do we want to have, how many agents per supervisor. It really is like a human resources exercise now, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I spent a good bit of time thinking and working on things exactly around collaboration models. How do the agents work with each other? How are they supervised? How do they work with humans? How do humans work with all those questions you have to answer when you go into this. And I feel like that's not an area maybe that's gotten as much focus as it needs.
Well, I think because it seems like science fiction to a lot of people, but we've
I
actually
guess.
crossed a threshold. I think with Open Claude in particular, there's
Mm,
literally 1.5 million agents in the last 6 weeks.
yeah,
That's incredible. That is not an insignificant number of agents
no,
all around the planet Earth, built on the same framework with the same tools and MCPs and skills and such. 1.5 million of them. Like
that's
that's
incredible.
a lot of football fields full of people if it was actually
Yeah,
people, right? So I don't
yeah,
think it can be
mm,
ignored anymore. And now I think people are starting to think about this sort of discussion. Well, how would I organize these? How would I build this house of cards of
yeah,
agents and what they do? And how do I build one? And how do they play nice with others, with humans?
yeah.
I think it really is going to be an emerging field. And I don't know if we start in the human resources department. Is there going to be a blended department of the IT leadership and the HR leadership explaining, okay, we've onboarded 15 agents this week, and here's what they do, and here's what their
Yep.
tasks are. Like I don't think this is going to stay just within the IT department for
Mm-mm.
very long.
No, no, I think it's a hybrid role between the 2, right? I mean, the problems that they deal with each have to be put together when you talk about the capabilities of the agents and building that workforce out. I one thing I wanted to make sure we get to chat about a little bit, because this has been an amount of noise over the last 6 to 8 months or so around MCP, and that's security. And I know there's been some concerns around security, prompt injection risks, tools and trusting the tools, identity, all those different kinds of things. So could you talk a little bit about that? What's the risk? What are they real? And what do you need to understand as a business when you're thinking about allowing the agents to use tools through MCP?
So I think there's something there. Obviously, there are concerns, and obviously MCP has tried to catch up in this regard, and they have improved the protocol. I think people have a better quality understanding of MCP and are building them. But yes, the risk is real. I sort of treat it as, are there official sanctioned MCPs from the company? Right? If for Google Drive, is there a Google MCP that their developers have published,
Mm,
that their developers have released? I guess the next tier would be to be, not that it's a security indication, but there's some level of trust with the number of stars it has on GitHub if you're looking at open source models.
right.
However, we even at Itential face it. We want to use some of these models, but they go under scrutiny, right? You can't just have any MCP off of any GitHub allowed on premises in your enterprise to be installed and played with or used, right? There's an emerging fear of shadow AI, much like we had shadow IT,
Yeah.
where people used to just use their own Wi-Fi, or they would use Box to move company data off to a third party so they could work on it at home. It was a convenience thing more than anything, shadow IT.
Yeah.
And shadow AI is going to be the same thing. Is it more convenient for me just to use my own personal GPT account for this than use the corporate one? Right? There's a
Mm,
lot of concern here. Now, MCPs add to that because you sort of have this semi open source wild west of MCPs, but there are real official valuable MCPs from Microsoft, from AWS, from Google, from GitHub, right? So the reputation of the MCP is paramount. I know when I built my Pyats MCP, so Cisco has an MCP security suite tool. I wish I knew the name of it offhand, but Cisco does have a tool that you can run against MCPs to test their security and to show you where the possible vulnerabilities are. So there
mm,
are defense mechanisms. There are ways you can interrogate these MCPs for security. But yes, be cautious and be prudent, in
mm.
particular on your work machines, right? Make sure you seek approval for these things. Are there a list of proved MCPs that you can use? Um, so you're right, Michael. We have to be careful. At the same time, I wouldn't. Security is the number one thing that always comes up for every innovation. I think recently, and I think that's a good question. But I don't. I say this trying to take my responsibility seriously, but I wouldn't let the security concerns hold you back
Right.
if you apply some common sense to what API keys you're giving, what MCPs, and what you connect where. I think
Yeah.
you just have to use your common sense. But yes, a level of caution should be applied.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very good way to think about it. One of the episodes I did recently was with a cybersecurity expert, and his real premise is that most security risks are actually human risk and not technological risk. And in other words, going into this with the right mindset and understanding and awareness changes your security posture as much as anything else you could do. And so that makes sense to me. One of the things I want to make sure we talk about, because this is a fun conversation we were having just before we started a recording, was your experiences with Claudebot and your recent use of and building out that. I'd love for you to share that story, because I think that would actually be really interesting to the audience.
So I've been following it very closely. The story, the craze,
Mm,
how fast it's been adopted, the number of stars it has on GitHub, are truly um, I don't know, like a revolution in AI and open source development. So I wanted to just build one. I've been building different agents for 2 or 3 years now, different flavors of agents, lang graphs, lang chains, different React agents. And I wanted to just try it myself and see if I could apply it to infrastructure. So, right, so wrap around my own layer of settings that let you install my Pyats code, different MCP servers, different skills. And it has been remarkable. And I have 100 stars on GitHub now in less than 48 hours, tens of thousands of views on my posts on LinkedIn. Now, this is a rare event for me. This is like a unicorn. I release a lot of code. I do a lot of content, a lot of videos. My video on YouTube already has 2,000 views in, like I said, 48 hours. Never has my work been so well received. And it's because it's an open Claude system. So what's kind of neat is during your installation of Open Claude, you connect it to one of many, many services, whatever LLM you want. You can connect it to Teams, to Slack, to Discord, to Telegraph, WhatsApp, Google, anything at all. And people are using them for personal assistance. And I wanted to make one as more of a network expert, an AI agent with network expertise. So I attached it to the VibeOps forum, which is a Slack channel that I've been running. It has over 500 engineers. And the first thing they tried to do was break it. They were trying to get it to do bad things on the router. They were trying to get it to divulge passwords. They were trying to get it to share its API keys. It actually made a record. It had 30 social engineering attempts against it. And it passed all 30 attempts. None of them worked.
Nice.
And I thought to myself, like, what a reflection on humanity. Here we go. Here's an AI agent you can build networks with. Ask it whatever you want. And the first thing people tried to do was destroy it and take hammers to it.
Yeah, that I guess that plays back into the human is the greatest risk that means in this, right?
Well, it actually gave me something to have a conversation piece about the security, because honestly, it held up to very sophisticated attacks. People were sending it base 64 encryption. People were sending it different languages. People were using political and socio hacks against it. And it happily held its ground. So I'm very proud of the guardrails that they stood up. It actually really was a lot of fun. But people were actually asking it very sophisticated network changes to make on the device. And within 2 or 3 minutes, it was making the change. It was documenting itself. It was making diagrams. It was running tests, all through Slack, just through natural language. Now you can upload a packet capture, and it has the skill to understand PCAPs and talk packets. It's just evolved so rapidly, and it's really an exciting time with this whole idea of AI agents that they've actually materialized into something tangible.
I mean, that's a great story. I keep thinking I should give it a try, but I haven't quite gotten to that yet. So interesting. But you've spent a lot of your career really trying to help people and make knowledge accessible. You've been a professor, you've written books, you're a builder, you're a developer advocate. So obviously you care about making information accessible. What kind of advice do you have for network engineers, IT leaders, CIOs who see all of this, AI and automation momentum, and they feel like they're falling behind?
So remind yourself that MCP is just a little over 1 year old. Techniques like retrieval augmented generation are only 2 years old. ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, right? So yes, relatively, if you haven't done any of those things, the furthest you're behind is about 3 years, right? 2 years, 1 year, depending on the technology. So you're not that far behind. I would suggest the train is still in sight from leaving the station, and you can catch up to it and get on the train. The other thing is, I would strongly recommend you start using AI to help get better at AI. There is a level of recursion here. Ask it to help you make the prompt and then make the prompt, right? Go a level back. Have it help really train you. Like, don't just have it write code, have it write the comments in the code, have it give you a recap. One thing I started to do now at the end of some vibe coding sessions is to ask introspective questions. Where are my blind spots? We've been coding for the last hour. What have I missed?
Mm.
What's outstanding? Is this secure? Have I thought of, edge cases? Start to ask introspective questions, and just try to use it as a tool to improve
Mm.
yourself, not just be better at coding and make cool things. Can this technology be used to improve us, to make us better and more productive and happier and more satisfied in the things that we're doing every day?
Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, this that train's moving pretty fast, right? I mean, it's only been 3 years, but boy, it sure feels like it's longer. So, if things continue, MCP adoption, AI agents continue at this kind of pace, I mean, put on your prognosticator's hat for just a second and tell me what does the typical network operation center look like in 2 years?
I think in 2 years it's going to be at least, you know, um, maybe not half, but the humans still involved are going to be heavily reliant on the AI agents to be doing most
Mhm.
of the work. I really think that in 2 years' time, absolutely. I think the projection is Gartner has a number that by 2030, 70% of all IT operations will be augmented with artificial intelligence. And I think that's going to take the shape of AI agents. So that leaves only 30% that the humans have to be doing alone. And I really strongly believe that the people that are going to be replaced by AI are going to be replaced by people who are building tools with AI, right? I
Mm.
don't think it's going to be a direct replacement of, well, we built a bot, Bob, and I'm sorry, but now the bot's
Sorry,
going to
you're
do your
gone.
job. I don't think that's the way it's going to work. I think it's going
Yeah.
to be, hey, Sally and Jim built this new AI agent that's going to help Bob do his job, and now Bob can get more done. And I
Mm.
think it's going to, be an augmentation for a while. Um, it's hard for me to be, I hate the doom and gloom, right? How many jobs is this going to cost? How many people are going to be out of work because of AI agents? I think it's the natural progression of time, and things are going to be different. I think for the better. I think this means better systems, more reliable systems, less weekends, less late nights. These agents don't sleep. These agents don't need food. These agents
Yeah.
don't have families. There's a lot of work to be done. And I think that if we can focus on the right type of work, then we can sort of be like accountants, right? When Lotus 123 came out and when Excel took over, I don't think there's less accountants in the world today, are there, Michael, than there were before Excel?
Mm.
There's probably more, an exponentially higher number of accountants, right? But they're working on policy and
Yeah.
governance and investment. An accountant in an enterprise is a very prestigious position because of the level of, right, how elevated that position has become. It's not just a floor of people churning away on number crunching machines anymore, right? So
Yeah.
I'd like to see a similar revolution in infrastructure where my 25 years of infrastructure experience elevates me into a position of speaking about governance and design and
Yeah.
uh, um, the future of the network and direction and higher level tasks other than
Yeah.
logging into a device to shut an interface down, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was talking probably a year ago now, I guess, to one of the co-founders of Zoho, and he's the CTO now, and he's been spending almost all his time working with coding and AI coding and how this is going to work. And I said, how do you think is this going to replace developers or what? And his answer I thought was really good, and because it's not going to we still need developers. We're not getting rid of them, but they need to learn some new skills because their role's going to shift. They're going to have higher level capabilities to do conceptual models and understanding and build out what you want it to do, not necessarily have to actually do the coding to make it do that. And I thought that was really important for people. And it's just like you said, right? It's just you got to upskill. You've got to learn some new ways to do things, but you're not going away, but you're going to have to continue to evolve.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's just a new. And we've always adapted, particularly in the network space. There has been a lot of changes in the network, right? We went through voice over IP, we went over wireless, quality of service, the
Yeah.
convergence of networks, software-defined
Yep.
networks, controllers, programmatic, network automation. It's just another phase, another cycle. And I think humans are well suited to adapt to this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Well, great conversation. But before we sign off, though, I always like to at the end ask for a recommendation of somebody for the audience, a thought leader, an author, somebody that they could follow, that they would get value from.
So I would say Dwan Lightfoot. He started the Lab Everyday movement a very long time ago,
Mm,
probably 15 years ago. He's former Cisco DevNet. He's been with AWS for a while. He is as far out in front in the in the AI space, particularly with the AWS stack, as
mm.
anyone you're going to meet. He's approachable. He's thoughtful. He's kind. He's community oriented. I would, and I know him personally. We're very good friends for a very long time, but and I feel very proud to be able to tell you to follow Dwan.
Great. Thank you. Very, very good recommendation. And John, thanks so much for sharing today. Really, really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, Michael. I hope to be back in maybe 3 months. We can see how far that train's gone down the track.
And that train is moving fast. We probably ought to touch base on it again soon.
All
Thanks.
right. Thanks, Michael.
Mm. And that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the show. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review to help others find us. For more research on AI and other software, check out arionresearch.com. If you're an expert in AI, generative AI, or business automation, either as a provider or an end user, email your information to disambiguation@arionresearch.com. Don't forget to join us next week. Disambiguation is an Arion Research production. I'm Michael Fauscette, and this is the Disambiguation Podcast.